Hello friends, so our subject is disaster management, and in that we are seeing the economics of disaster and disaster finance. And the topic for today is the financial mechanism and services for risk reduction. So, for the disaster risk reduction, economics and finances are very important. We are going to see how the insurance, microcredit, and the microfinance play an important role to reduce the vulnerabilities of the people. See, money is very important before the disaster and after the disaster. Suppose there is a disaster, earthquake is there, so your houses are lost, your livelihood is affected. So you need to have some savings to cope up with this, or some external mechanism which can help you in this period after the disaster. Loans are an important instrument to generate the income, but it also has its problems that you have to repay. Otherwise, there is a lot of debt that you have to face, and there is a possibility that your mortgage is went off, or it is gone. Loans are basically taken to have the stocks of the food, means so that you can have the food, then to make improvements in your farmlands, or your shops, or your repairing of the houses, or buying some tools which are lost, or other equipments. Now whenever you have want money, you either go to the money lender, or often borrows from the uh, extended family members. But what happens if these people also don't have the money? That can be a scenario in case of a disaster if the severity is very large. After a disaster, suppose a disaster has happened, so the community savings can help to build your houses again, or making the improvements. A community saying, for example, a group of people are there, and they, before the disaster, means here in this period, then they have saved the money for their community, then they can help back each other to build something. Poor are badly affected after a disaster, because their financial conditions are poor before the disasters, and it gets worse after the disaster, and they find it difficult to borrow the money from their friends. And the market is also market also slows down. The clients may don't want to buy the goods It may happen that the banks where the money is deposited, that whole bank may get destroyed and the money might flow away. So this can happen. So there is a diagram which shows the financial impact of the disasters on the household. First is the immediate impact. There is a risk event. So we see in the three, that is the immediate impact. What is the immediate impact? Then how it is response, and how what is the long term impact. Long term impact. So when there is a risk event like a flood, so four things happen. First is there is income loss because everything is destroyed, and the organization or the structure which gives you income, that is only not working. Then there is a asset loss. Your whole structures get destroyed. Your savings may get affected. So in recovery you use them. Therefore there is a asset loss, and there is a need for lump sum cash. Since it is a shock to the economy, to revive the economy you want cash. So this is the risk. Now there is response. This is the immediate impact, as you can see here. Now in response you have the low stress, which produces low stress. Then it may produce the medium stress, or it may produce the high stress. Now in low stress, if the stress is low, so what you do, you generally modify the consumption pattern. For suppose a disaster happens and you have a habit of eating apples, so for some days you don't eat apple. Improve the family budgeting. Budgeting is improved. You look upon it, where the money is going, where from what are the sources of money. So you try to reduce the outgoing money, so that you have money to do, to carry work. Then when there is low stress, there is small debts, and you get the money from the informal group based insurance, and draw from the formal insurance. Means the insurance, you claim something. Suppose your car is damaged, so you ask any insurance company like the Indian Society to claim for it, so you get money. Now for the medium stress, you use the savings. Whatever money you have, you try to use this. You again try to borrow from your informal sources. Informal sources are your for family and friends, extended family. You diversify the income sources. Suppose you are on a job, and so you try to do something extra to diversify. For example, mm, starting a small business. You mobilize labor. You migrate. As the stress is medium, so it may happen that you have to migrate from one place to another place in search of the job. and you shift business to residence. This happened during the COVID. Many grocery shops were operated from homes rather than the market. And when there is high stress, what do high stress? You sell the household assets. You sell the assets. You sell the productive assets. Productive assets. For example, you're a farmer. You sell your farm. You sell your tractor. Your employees who are who are used for the threshing or in the warehousing, you let them go. You run down the business stocks. Whatever food grains are there, you sell them, and you don't have that much quantity of grains that you have before, because you don't have money to handle them. You don't have resources. You don't have time. You don't have tractor. How will you do? Automatically the business stocks will go down. You default on loans. You don't have money, then how can you repay your loan? So you default. Your consumption drastically reduces. And more hours is you take your children out of the school. When you have a low stress, and we have seen here the low stress, so what you do during the long term impact, what is your response at the low stress? So reallocate the household resources. You reduce unnecessary expenditure. So what is the impact? Unnecessary expenditures are less. Temporary change in the lifestyle, as your consumption patterns are changing, so there is going to change a temporary change in the lifestyle, like the apple eating habit. It is going it, it is going to go now. Now the medium stress, you depleted the financial reserves. As your savings are used, so your financial reserves are reduced. Okay, independent indebtedness, claim on the future income flow. Long working hours, diversify, uh, or the business loss. See, you are going to diversify. It means you are working extra, so you are going to have the long working hours. Interference with the family life. You said that you shift business to residence. What do you mean by this? So your families get involved, and interference with family life. And there are increased social obligations. When there is a high stress, then there is a loss of productive capacity, since you don't have any asset, neither the household asset or the productive asset, so your productive capacity is lost. Loss of income. Then there are depleted assets. These assets are gone, so what will happen? They are getting depleted. Loss of access to financial markets. You are not working, so whatever market you are there, means whatever the agriculture market you are working here, doing something that you can't access. you can't access, so there is a loss, and this can create your health problems and social isolation. You are taking out of school your children, so this ultimately creates the social isolation. This is the financial impact of the disasters on the households. Okay, now how government and the international finance for DRR. And international finance for DRR. The public investment and the climate change adaptation. These are two important things: the public investment and the climate change adaptation for the communities, and how to, in the form of the grants or the loans. An example is given of the Peru. Example is given of the Peru, that how they have done this. So claiming, so Peru is a vulnerable country in South America. In South America, mm, I think it is located here, and this is the ocean, and it is affected by cyclones and other things. So the Peruvian government did something. They did climate change risk management in public investments. So what they did, they integrated, the government there integrated the systemic climate risk management approach into national public investment system. Means climate risk management into national public investment system. National public investment system, and they invested a lot of money. The project was financed by the German government. The aim was to public investment into the future climate risk by screening into the various programs. Means they are money or public money, they are putting the money. How? By screening different programs. What were the screening? They were screening agriculture, transport, health, energy, housing, sanitation, and tourism, to make sure that it was done that investment with respect to climate change and DRR. Means obviously these things will get money, but this money should also have the components of climate change adaptation and DRR. Climate change adaptation means as per the climate you are adapting or undertaking some things so that it may help in future. So number of workshops were held, and some changes were also done. So it helped in redesigning of the projects. Next is resource. The next case study is the resourcing community resilience. Resourcing community resilience. Example is from 2009 Bihar, where UNICEF and its local NGO partners has ensured that the communities acquire the knowledge and the skill through various trainings and the workshops and the meetings. This whatever projects were there, they were integrated with the panchayat village level plans. Suppose means UNICEF is having some program, and a village in Bihar is also having their programs. So they are targeting these programs of the panchayat. Some of the initiatives here were the building of the embankments, or the build or constructing roads, then raising the plinth of the house. This will help to tackle the flood. So the government has is used, and the money or the public investment has been used to solve this problem of disasters. Money is very important. We have to find that. There is a statistics that the DRR in international aid, means the money given for DRR, is just 0.4%, and in response it is high as 65%. As we see the cycle of the disaster, beside disaster there is also mitigation, rehabilitation, preparedness, but only the response, means the immediate action, that is getting much of the money. If more money is getting in this, in preparedness, then it can work wonders. Then so much of money is not required here. Then we come to important point of microcredit and microfinance. So microfinance, it can help in to deal with the disasters. So the microfinance institutions, they can be government, they can be private or non-profit, to semi-formal or informal, and they give the variety of loans depending on different terms and conditions. In low income countries, the money come from the families, as we said. So these resources are accessible. The loans from the families, these are small, and they are accessible, but we cannot rely on them much. They can prove insufficient to handle the stress. Many people give their money, which can be helped later. So now next point is that the NGOs are also working here in this sector to create the formal microfinance institutions. Here they will deposit the small amount of money, and the charge small amount of money, and charge is also low, and low charge. Now here understand that these microfinance institutions are not established by formal institutions, so the rules can be varied, and the person there, they can influence it, but the main thing here is trust among the people. These microfinance institutions, why are they important? Because they can help during the disasters, but there are certain problems, like after the disaster there is the rescheduling of loans, rescheduling of loans or writing off. This writing off is undesirable. It destroys the trust. Despite of this problem, the informal institutions are very popular. Why they are very popular? Because they are easily available, and they are provided rapidly in case of disaster. After the disaster, these microfinance institutions help for rebuilding or uh, buying the utensils or equipments like the sewing machine, the CNC machine, or the cobbler equipments, etc. Only large microfinance institutions can do these things at a larger level. So there is a need that these microfinance institutions should be linked to, should means have a importance in the post disaster phase, post disaster action phase. Looking at their importance, they should be linked with the early warning systems, or they should have some idea what is going to happen. Here is a need of market research. There are certain countries which are disaster prone, means they um, these countries regularly face disasters. So these microfinance institutions as a component of the savings compulsory saving, that these that's a certain amount of money has to be put, and they cannot be used at any point of time. They can be used only during the contingency. During the contingency period. But there is an issue here also, that for a poor, disaster is not the only case when they need money or the post disaster. due to less availability of the assets or the liabilities. They want money, at can need money at any point of time. They cannot pool the resources any time when they are in need, so they don't um, take part in these microfinance institutions but go for other sources. As we spoke that the microfinance institutions, they are doing a great work in response, but for the preparedness and mitigation their work is not so much. But in Bangladesh have these microfinance institutions which are working in the preparedness and the mitigation. Means they have the emergency subsidized the loans for the emergency preparedness. They also, means microfinance institutions, they also ask mm, their members that they develop their own contingency, and also to reduce risk they are providing the non-financial credit. Means the loans of seeds, tools or materials. For example, there is a community saving schemes and the post disaster recovery in Philippines. There is HPFPI, that is the Homeless People's Federation Philippines, and it is a national network of 200 communities and almost 19,000 people. So after the disaster, this help to for the people to move to the safer locations. And this scheme has enabled them to rebuild on the new sites. And in 2008, after the typhoon, the savings of the people that was used in getting the procurement of the building materials and for the cost of labor for the house constructions. Also another MFI, the microfinance institutions um, in Latin America, which has the name of Emergency Liquidity Facility. In 2005, which it helped to the disaster affected people. They also gave the loans for the quick recovery. Mm. But before doing this, the microfinance institutions has to make sure that they can spread more risk. If they get destroyed during the disaster, then what will happen? So their risk assessment is very important. And but still, after doing the risk assessment, these well prepared microfinance institutions can't cope up with disaster. But this doesn't mean that you do nothing, you have to do something. This emergency liquidity facility in 2005 helped a lot of people. The other things we will see in the next video.